permit us all to sort of reflect critically on what we set out to do with Liaise and also what we've achieved in the first year. Refreshingly, he's also going to speak without PowerPoint slides. So, on behalf of everybody in Liaise, welcome.
Thank you, Andy, for these nice words. I'm particularly pleased to be here. I wish to thank you, Klaus, Jacob, and Jordan, and Alessandro Goria as organizer for this invitation to address your assembly. I said before to Alexandra that I'm from Milan, so there's also the extra pleasure of being back in my hometown. I don't have a PowerPoint presentation. Perhaps I could just sit there and look at my speaking notes, but perhaps I need to do 1 and 2. Okay. In preparing these notes, I was trying to do something useful, hopefully for you, and offer something you can think about, and at the same time reflect on my work over the last few years. As Andy said, I've been looking at impact assessment in different ways, and also report, in a sense, on what I've done and what I'm doing now. Just one word on the lens for this 20-minute talk. You can look at impact assessment and the tools from different angles, obviously. And mine today is a very classic one, which is knowledge utilization, which is a field between sociology and political science. But I think that knowledge utilization is a useful lens if you're interested in tools, and not just the tools as engineering tools or instruments, but as something that is used by policy officers and policymakers. You mentioned the training the new generation, so hopefully no one will mind if I go back to an old article that people like us have read some years ago. Several years ago, Carol Weiss talked about the many meanings of research utilization, and it's something that we refer back in several of our publications. She mentioned the knowledge-driven model of knowledge utilization, where it's basic research that drives applied research, and that applied research percolates down in a new handset television, the iPod, or whatever. She contrasted this with the problem-solving model, where essentially we don't wait for research to follow this linear progress, but there are people grappling with a specific policy issue, and therefore they look at research on the one hand selectively, and also research that is available there. They cannot wait for research to be developed and get down and fall down in that policy field. And obviously in this area, knowledge utilization is starts being a bit murky in terms of not just taking what is exactly the best science available, but also having problems with trans-scientific questions that can be posed in the language of science, but science has not as yet answered. Then she looked at the interactive model, which is a variation in which there is no real premium on the scientist or on science. All resources in a hyper-pluralist model where all resources, expertise, knowledge, politics, bureaucratics, memories, whatever, are on the same field. So the scientist is one of the actors that interacts with the others, but no one is particularly interested in science per se. It's the process of interaction in which resources are chosen by the policymakers. Then she has the tactical model, which is essentially, it's a nice word, tactical, but it's much worse than we think. It's when organizations use research as a signal to public opinion to say that we know that your need is very important, and so much so that we are doing research on it right now. So also to buy time, tactical in the sense of delaying and saying we cannot take a decision because we are doing research and research has not been completed yet, or ex post justification for whatever an organization does, and then the mantra would be, everything we do here is based on research, we spend 3% of our budget on research, so we're fine whatever we do. And that's a tactical use. And then I finish it, because we are familiar probably with this article, the Enlightenment model, in which essentially is not a single decision that drives the usage of a single piece of research, but it's a cumulative result after many years, or having done research in an area, or having thought about a particular policy problem by using some concepts, some models, some tools, that over the year creates a kind of shift in the beliefs and ways of doing things, the way to frame specific problems. I think one of the examples was the school voucher. It was not a single piece of research that made the school voucher popular, but obviously after 6 years of research demonstrating, supposedly, the value of school vouchers, policymakers started talking about school voucher. I think this is great for impact assessment, because very rarely do we find that there is a correspondence between a specific type of research on sustainability and a specific decision. But obviously we can claim that after 10, 15 years of doing cost-benefit analysis, for example, of the, in America, the Environmental Protection Agency decisions, EPA has moved from a kind of ecological rationality to a position that is more utilitarian. And so the officers, that could be an argument, look at problems of sustainability through particular lenses and not others, as a result of having used some types of research for many years. I said that this is my lens for the talk today. I want to relate it now to what I found. I used more or less, I mean, didn't use exactly this article, but I was inspired by this work and the work of Susan Owens on knowledge and appraisals. And unsurprisingly, coming probably from this perspective, I found that there are many ways in which the impact assessment systems and their tools are used in Europe and in North America. One lesson from my previous research is that impact assessment, especially in North America, in the US more than in Canada, can be used as an instrument of political control of the bureaucracy. There is nothing wrong with elected politicians using impact assessment as an information provider that alerts on what the agent, in this case the regulator, is doing. But this model of bureaucratic control does not fit